Hi, welcome to Friday Fat Chat. I am Ivy Felicia. Gotta be able to say my own name. I'm Ivy Felicia, the body relationship coach, and I'm the founder of Fat Women of Color. And we created Friday Fat Chat to create a forum where we amplify the voices of Black and Brown women of size. And so the purpose of Friday Fat Chat is just to have a place where Black and Brown women of size can share their expertise, their experiences, their feelings, their stories. And we do this through a series of interviews, and we'll also be having a lot of other uh, material coming out that we'll be sharing with you all as well. So thank you for watching. First of all, I want to invite you to like this episode today if you haven't already done so, and make sure that you subscribe, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to our channel so that you can always get notifications when we're going live, and you can also get notifications about any upcoming events and interviews that we have going on. And last but not least, make sure that you share this on your channel or with other people in your community, other people online. And it tells YouTube, first of all, that you like what we're doing here and the material that we're creating here, and then it also just gets the word out to other people as well. So before we get started, I want to tell you all that we have a gift and we have a sponsor today. So I wanted to thank Calabash Tea for sponsoring Friday Fat Chat. Calabash Tea is located in Washington, D.C., and it is a Black woman-owned business, and they're sponsoring our Friday Fat Chat episode today, and they also are a sponsor of Fat Women of Color in general. If you use the code FWOC, which stands for Fat Woman of Color, you can get 10% off your order. And then they also donate to Fat Women of Color as well. So you'll be supporting us, and you'll also be getting a gift. So it's the reciprocity for us. We love it. So no further ado, today is Friday Fat Chat, and we invite featured guests to come on the show to talk with us. And our guest from today, I'm so excited to chat with her. She's Fat Black Luxury on Instagram, and also Toni Wilson. So welcome, Toni.
Hi, it's so good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you feeling? I know we had a little bit of technical difficulties at the
Yeah,
beginning.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, can you tell us just a little bit about you and tell us a little about you, what you do, and also Fat Black Luxury, just kind of introducing your Instagram channel to us and a little bit about what that's about.
Hi everyone. My name is Toni Wilson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I'm a daughter of immigrants, so I'm a first generation American. My family, we are Jamaican. So a lot of what I do is rooted in my culture. I see being from Jamaica and connecting to my island roots as a form of resistance. Y'all know what all the things are as we resist against white supremacy, colonialism, imperialism, all the things, right? That's what I connect to and hold on to. Um, some more about me: I'm a social worker and I do social work through advocacy, policy change, direct service, counseling, all the things. So, all the avenues that we can support our own community, pour back into Black communities and Black folks in healing and restorative ways. You asked about my Instagram. Yeah, I like to cultivate my Instagram. It's Fat Black Luxury. I'm the same handle on Instagram and Twitter. My Instagram is a lot ranging from my taste in music and art and culture, connecting with my beliefs as a Black feminist with a hood perspective. I discuss tips for body positivity and wellness, so ways that we can talk to ourselves and nurture our inner child. understanding that I am a social worker as well. I work with young people, so helping to root self-love, radical self-love, within them from an early age, I think also transpires to my Instagram page. And then I'm also giving y'all fashion and giving y'all me because I'm cute and whatever. And, that's always got to pop off on there too. Yeah, and I'm also a writer and contributor for the Curvy Fashionista. So doing all the things all the time.
Yes. So first of all, we gotta thank you for sharing that, and definitely honoring Marie Denee because she's one of the trailblazers in the plus size community. I feel like she doesn't get I mean, she gets lots of love and shine, but I feel like people don't reference the work that she's done for the plus size community and how she was out there before this was like super hella trending and positive and I guess popular and all of that. Marie with Danae was out there doing her thing.
She was, and I feel so honored to be a part of her journey too now, a part of expanding and growing her brand, being a contributor to the site and writing so many pieces on the culture, specifically as it pertains to fat Black women. I feel is really important. So I'm just really enjoying my time there and getting to explore different avenues with them. So it's been great so far. And like you said, she's an OG, so we love to see it.
Yes. So let's rewind a little bit to some of the things that you shared. I typically ask our guests, because it's just kind of people who are watching, whether they do or do not follow you, it helps them know a little bit more about your journey. So being a woman of size, have you always been in the body of size? Have you always been plus size? You reference yourself as fat because you're fat Black flesh. Okay. Have you always been a woman of size and have you always used the word fat or embraced the word fat?
Yeah, well, I've always been a person of size. I've been fat since I was like probably 5. I don't know. I make this joke and I'm always like, I never know what time when my thighs weren't rubbing together. I don't know. Like I don't even know what that is. Um so yeah, I grew up as a chubby kid, chunky kid, whatever, all the things that we have. Um and of course I was a fat teenager, all the things. I didn't start identifying myself. I always saw fat as a derogatory term. And I didn't start attaching myself and using the term until I was about maybe 20, so maybe like my junior year of college. And I noticed when I started to become more comfortable with the word and stop seeing it as a word that people could weaponize against me, it started to make people who were around me uncomfortable. So I remember specifically myself and one of my best friends from high school, we would start, referring to ourselves using the term. And of course, sometimes we would use it platonically with each other in a joking way, like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 fat or whatever the case may be. Like as a, how do I say this? But like as a way to like nurture each other, right? And then I noticed like one of my friends who was at the time, she was thin, conventionally attractive, all the things. She was probably a size 4, maybe, or even a 2. I don't know, maybe a 4, maybe a 2 is dragging it. But yeah, I remember one time she like pulled me aside and was trying to have like a intervention with me type of thing, and she was like, Toni, why do you keep referring to yourself as fat? Like I think you're talking down to yourself and yada yada yada, basically trying to tell me that she saw me referring to myself as fat as me having low self-esteem, and that I needed her support to help get me out of that. And at the time I was like, okay, at the time I kind of apologized. I was like, well, okay, well, maybe you're right. I don't know. All right, cool. But then as I got older, maybe like a year after I graduated college, and our friendship got a little rocky, I started to assess a little bit of our friendship. And in the like after we're assessing it, I was like, wow, I actually let her convince me that me using that word to refer to myself was wrong, or that I was like setting myself up for failure or something. When in actuality, I didn't need to, evaluate why I was referring myself to as that. She needed to reevaluate why me referring to myself as fat bothered her so much as my friend, right? And how sometimes people who are in thinner bodies, they think they're doing fat people a favor by being their friends. Yeah, so I just think that was a lot of my journey of like how I began referring to myself as fat and like reclaiming the power that that word has over our community. Um, so yeah, that was a lot of my journey of getting to the word fat and being comfortable with it. And now actually naming it in the work that I do. I currently identify as a fat acceptance advocate, an activist. I think it took me a while to get there because I had to do some some unlearning and unconditioning of like why is it okay, why it's okay for us to say like, yeah, like fat needs to be accepted, because I grew up, of course, like a lot of us learning that fat is wrong and you need to be the opposite of that, and all those things. So now I'm like sitting comfortable in that, no, like I'm an advocate for myself first, and of course, and then for my community as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I love how you talked about the difference between how someone else was trying to define you and how you decided to define yourself. I find that to be when we have these conversations on Friday Fat Chat, it comes up often, right? It sort of starts with people talking about, oh, well, other people were sort of defining me in this way. And then you have this aha moment where it's like, no, I get to define myself. And it sounds like you reclaimed the word fat as something that you would embrace. And like you said, now it's part of the work that you do, and going on and actually doing fat acceptance work. What sort of drew you into doing fat acceptance work?
Oh, that's a good question. Just the lack of spaces I had to feel accepted. I go back to again to the friend group, right? Because honestly, like those are the spaces that we cultivate for ourselves, right? And we hope that they're safe spaces. And I think I started like growing. I started learning more, and I started recognizing that I keep reverting back to college, and I'm going to probably talk about that a lot because I think like college for me, those 4 years were very pivotal. They were a time for me to reinvent and recreate myself. And also, they were a time that radicalized me in a very meaning and true way. Um, all my life, I had always had friends of size, right? In elementary school, I was chubby. I had chubby friends that looked like me, and that was fine. And I always went to school in like pretty Black and Caribbean neighborhoods. So my friends and I always identified right on a plethora of levels, right? So they were also Caribbean background. They were also chubby. We connected. Middle school, same thing. I had friends who were of size, who were Black and Black American and or Black Caribbean. We related. High school, kind of similar. I had about like two or three friends of size. But I started going to school in a pretty Latinx neighborhood, so they weren't like all Black, but we related for the most part. And then I got to college, and I was like, oh, okay. And that was the first time I had formed a group of friends, but I was one of the only, right? Like in my group of friends in college, I was the only fat friend, right? I was the only friend of size, and that is what started to trigger a lot of things for me because I had never experienced being one of the only. So when you ask me about what sparked my need to go out and do, or like my desire, my passion to go out and do fat acceptance work, um it's really because I saw firsthand what like how and I and we all connect it with our childhoods too, because I have things I can talk about from childhood as well that were traumatic. But that specifically, I had always been able to, even when the outside world was telling me, oh, you're not this, you're not that, I still always had friends who held me down. We always were able to confide in each other. So when I got to that space and I didn't have anyone who I could relate to on certain things, who I could talk to and confide in and find solace about my identity as a fat person, um, that sparked in for me of like, okay, I need to go out and do this work. I need to create space for people to talk about this. I need to I also need to do my own unpacking, right? Because there was a time too, and I think sometimes we all come to the work. I always I'm like we always saying the work. I have my own issues with that. But we all come to these spaces because we are these spaces, right? I'm a firm believer that nothing I have ever done in my life has not been informed by my fatness. None of it, right?
Mm,
When I was 19, I remember going for a job interview for like a operations assistant, which was like someone who sat at a front desk and assisted the secretary, so like the secretary's assistant. Um, and they didn't want to give me the job because I was a fat teenager, right? And they were like, "Oh, you won't look good at the front desk," right? They
mhm.
said it in like quote unquote better words, but that was the gist of it, right? So I started to see how, oh, like it's not just that I'm a fat black girl, but it's that, oh, I'm a fat black girl and things will be denied to me
Yeah,
because I'm a fat black girl. A few years ago, I remember something about this also sparked this, and I think when we talk about fat acceptance, I mean the reason why I started doing it is because you just can't escape it. It's like so ingrained in everything. And I think as a child, from friend groups that I fostered to like the medical system, like it took me a really long time to learn that this is not how things are supposed to be. Because you experiencing them so often, you look at them as normal.
yeah,
Like I never knew that I can opt out of being weighed at the doctor, right? I never knew that doctors aren't supposed to poke and prod at you in a specific way. I never knew that all these things. I never knew also, I learned this recently. I never knew that insurance companies can deny you insurance because of your weight. I'm like, damn, I
yeah,
can't even die with dignity, right? And I learned that because I was doing some research. But even on certain things, it's like I have no choice not to be a part of it, because at every which way I turn, society's trying to deny me something because I'm a person of size, right? So
mm,
how can I not be a fat acceptance advocate? How can I not position myself to speak up when these are their structures at hand always ready to kill me,
yeah.
for lack of better words, because that's what they want to do. So yeah, I feel like that was a long way to answer your question, but I just get very passionate and very heated because it's
No,
real.
that's what we're here for, right? That's what the platform is about, to create the space where fat black and brown women can share their stories and be heard. Because I think that, well, not I think, hell, I know that like what you're saying, there aren't a lot of spaces that create this, right? Where you can just sit and hear and listen to the stories. And it's interesting for me, the more we have these interviews, there's so many common, it's like this thread that kind of runs through the interviews, where there's so many similarities, but we don't, it's not on mainstream media, right? We don't like turn on the TV and see black and brown, people inside sharing their stories and talking about like what it is to live inside of these bodies. So when you do get the chance to talk, I'm all ears. I'm listening earnestly, and that's what the channel is about, like really to create that space. So no apologies necessary at all. To those of you who are watching live, we do have a live chat. So if you put anything in the comments, we can see it. And Yesenia is working in the background, and she'll make sure that we get your comments pulled up on the screen. We have a comment from Tigress. Hi, Tigress. Tigress also does fat acceptance and fat activism work with NAFA. And she says yes to teaching young people radical self-love. So that definitely resonates. And that's a whole nother conversation that we could all get together and have about, because so much energy goes into sort of freeing ourselves, right? And then kind of helping, women of size. And then we have a whole other thing with generational work, which Dr. Joy Cox talked about in a previous interview when she was on Friday Fat Chat as well, and talking about like that generational work. So we definitely have a lot of work to do. Joy Cox says, "Hey y'all." I didn't even see that for real. But yeah, hey Joy, thank you for watching. So if you're watching and you have questions or comments, or if you want to AFEM, which is our version of Amen that came from Yesenia, if you want to AFEM our guest as she's talking, you can do that and join in on the conversation. If you're watching the replay, still feel free to share in the comments, because we'll be able to see those comments and share them with our guests later on as well. Um, so Toni, kind of getting back to some of the things that you were talking about earlier, I'd love to know a little bit about, because I know you said, um, you grew up in this kind of environment where you had fat friends as a younger girl, and it was just kind of part of your community. And then when you went to college, things were kind of different. Um, when it came to your family, were they embracing of your size? Like, was it a fat positive history that you came from? Because I know that varies across the board for a lot of people of size.
Yeah. To flat out answer your question, no. It was not a family of, oh my gosh, okay, you're bigger, we accept you, we love you. No, it was, and it's funny. It's a flip of a coin, because I'm sure you'll ask me about this later. It's funny because I often find that the people who are parents, whoever that person might be, your caretaker, your parents, your mom, your guardian, whomever, um, even though they might look like you, they still want to fix you, right? So growing up, my mom was fat. My mom was always a woman of size. I look at pictures from her growing up, from like in her early 20s, her like late teens to now. She was always, and we look actually just alike. It's also like always like, I know genes work like how genes work, but I'm always looking at like, damn, we look just alike. But anyway, I'm like, she was always a woman of size. She's still a woman of size. So it's always weird to me how when I was younger, I thought my mom was like so beautiful. I was like, you're the most beautiful person ever. But it was so weird because even though I had looked just like her, um, she was always trying to fix me and make sure I didn't look like her, right?
Mhm.
So even like I thought she was beautiful, but oftentimes the people who are molding us don't think that of themselves, right? So even though I thought she was beautiful and I was hyped as hell to look like my mom, I still am. I tell people every day, I look just like my mom. She didn't want me to look like her in that way. So growing up, yeah, it was always like, let's try a fad diet here or a fad diet there, or like I'd be going to doctors like, doctor, how can we fix her? Like how can she like lose 30 pounds? Like, and this carried on up until maybe I was in like high school. And then, of course you start to get to the age where you can more so, I won't say an adult, because I didn't identify with being an adult until I was probably like 20, right? Until I started making my own doctor's appointments. But I got to the point where I was like, okay, I no longer have to, you don't have the power to instruct how I live my life anymore, right? And that didn't happen until, like I said, my late teens, early 20s. I'm 27 for folks who just add some framing to it. But yeah, growing up, I definitely framed my household as, it was definitely a toxic space for me in terms of body image. I didn't feel that my family thought I was pretty, which of course translated to, again, I go back to the friend groups, right? Because so when you're looking for validation, where you're looking for a community, you go and you build it somewhere else, right? So I always took pride in my friend groups and having people that I could, connect to. I was definitely that high schooler who I hated being home. So this is also a quick note for people who might be on the call that work with young people, right? So if a young person is like at your office or like in your classroom or whatever after hours, like those are also flags too, right? Something to think about. Like they might be like I was the overachiever. I never got bad grades. I never got in trouble. And I would just go to after school and I would go to tutoring sessions just cause I didn't want to go home, right? Um, and it wasn't that like, oh my God, like all this like tumultuous things were going on at home, but because I knew if I knew something at school could buy me less time to feel little about myself before going home, then I was gonna do that, right? Um, so yeah, to answer your question, I don't think I started cultivating a safe space at home in terms of body image until my early 20s. When I would say I went off to college, I learned like a new perspective on myself. And I stepped more into myself, into my own light. And I started being able to name fatness as an identity politic, and how it informs how I move through the world. Um, and then I became even firmer in that. So like now my family knows that my body isn't up for discussion, right? I don't care who you are, whether you're my mom, whether you're my brother, um, whether you're my aunt that I haven't seen in 3 years. Because, I don't know, like Caribbean folks love to point out that you gained weight if they didn't see you in a long time. Like, I'm going to Jamaica for my birthday, God willing, in a few weeks, like a month and a half. And I kid you not, someone's gonna make a comment and they're gonna say something, and I'm gonna have to say something back because I've always been that child. Like my family has always called me the rebel child because I never let you get away with slick shit at all. I don't know if I'm cursing. I'm sorry. I just
You're
didn't let you get
fine.
away with nothing. So I definitely draw that line in the sand with my family that my body is not up for discussion. Um, and either y'all can respect it or y'all can get disrespected. So pick one. That's
So
it.
what again, there's a thread that goes across many of these interviews. These are common things. When you grow up as a person of size and you're in this family and they're kind of like, well, what to do about this child? In this fat body type thing and becomes a problem solving thing. That tends to be common as well. What do you think, especially with the work that you do, because we can't go back and change the past at all, but with the work that you do as far as social work and being more informed around fat acceptance, what would it look like to create a home, right, for a fat child or a larger child? What would it look like to create a home that is nourishing of their body image and where they feel loved and appreciated? What do you think that would look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it would look like safety, right? I think it can look like a lot of things, and I think with young people, while I'm not in their home. We all know that young people, well, when schools were open, and when spaces were open, um, young people spend their most of their time outside of home, right? Like they spend at least an 8 to 9 hour day in school. And then they go to like after school programs or like wellness programs that like I would run, um, for another hour and a half or whatever, right? So one thing I do in my spaces is that I name fat phobia, right? So I have, young people who range from like 14 to early 20s who are coming to terms with what fat phobia is and naming it for the first time, right? I remember I had a young person maybe a year ago. They were talking to me about, and they were a teenager of size. They were talking to a Black girl, and she was talking about how all her friends call her mama, right? And I was like, what? She's 16. And she was like, yeah, they all call me mama. And she was like, she was like, yeah, it's a term of endearment, and like, because I'm like the nurturer of the group, and like they come to me for all the things. And I was like, I had to walk her through like the mammy stereotype, and like how people view like bigger black girls and black women as like the nurturer, and how you're like gonna bear all your friends' burdens and stuff. And after we talked for like 30 minutes, she was like, what? I'm a text them right now in a group chat. I ain't nobody mama. And
Yes.
I was like, damn right you're not. So whether it's something like that, talking about fat phobia, so like how like even as fat phobia as like also connected to ableism, right? So whether we're able to talk about like how desks are shaped in our classrooms, to how seats are shaped in auditoriums, how we talk about food and calling that out in spaces. So we have young people, like I know we all do this too, who talk about, oh, I can't eat this because XYZ, or ooh, I ate this, now I gotta go run extra laps in gym tomorrow, or ooh, I ate this, now I gotta, ooh, or like they'll eat something and say, oh, I earned this today because I did really good in track or whatever. And I'm like, you don't have to earn your food. If you're craving it, you can just eat it because you want to eat it, right? So helping them to shift their language. And I think that connects back in the home, because if we're thinking about safety, those are all the things that piles up to how young people feel, right? When you help to nurture a young person's body, their body image, how they feel about themselves, it makes them less likely to harm themselves and also harm others, right? When you consistently condition young people that their bodies are wrong, you're innately telling them that they're wrong, right? And we are telling someone that they're wrong and that their being is wrong, they then revert to negative self-talk, um, and they begin violating their bodies, right, in whatever way that might take shape. And when we violate our bodies, we immediately go to and resort to self-soothing, right? And that can look like a myriad of things. I know for most young people, it looks like, doing things that they shouldn't be involved with. It also looks like emotional and little eating, because you want immediate comfort. It can look like a lot of things. It can look like engaging in risky behaviors. So I think once we can connect in the home of talking better to young people, I think that's a major first step. Just creating spaces where they can feel safe. And like the tongue is very powerful. How we talk about food is really powerful and important. Being able to shift our mindset from calorie counting, from bad foods, good foods, healthy, not healthy, things like that. I mean, even if like growing up as a teenager, even if someone would have just told me something as simple as, oh, I think even like right, even like as a old like a as a someone in their early 20s, I it took me really long to even like work out in public spaces, right? Like now I enjoy going to like dance classes. I enjoy going to the gym for cardio and stuff like that. But when I was younger, I was attached exercise with punishment, because that's
Yeah.
how it was framed to me. Like I needed to exercise because I did something wrong. I ate what I shouldn't have ate, and now I gained 30 pounds and I gotta lose it. Like it was always framed as punishment, right? So even like the framing, like right now, even like trying to talk to young people about, oh, it's just good to move for 30 minutes a day. That's it. Like because endorphins are good, serotonin levels are increasing. That's great. It's great to get your heartbeat going, right? So instead of framing it of like these are just things that are good for you, right? We revert to you exercise because you need to look thin, because you need to lose weight, because blah blah blah. That also frames how safe young people feel and how they don't feel, and then it will affect them as they grow older, right? Because you can only repeat behaviors that you've been shown. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like all those are just like really great starting points for people who are watching, whether you are a parent or a caretaker, an educator. Like these are really good places to start. It's never too late. If you have children in your home, whether they're young children, adolescents, teens, even adults, it's never too late to start creating, safety within your home for them. And I know you mentioned earlier in your story, Toni, how, even though your mom was a person of size, she still kind of grappled with that herself. So that's something for viewers and listeners to think about, where if you are sort of grappling with your body image or your relationship with your body or your relationship with your food, know that you don't have to feel ashamed of that. There's no guilt for that, but do know that that does impact the children in your home, right? So they do see how you're talking about yourself, how you're talking about your body. And then sometimes those things, the way, like you said, Toni, the way you feel about yourself comes out in the words that you say to them and the way that you interact with them. So it's never too late to kind of to start shifting that and changing the narrative and changing the like we mentioned earlier, changing like that generational legacy that we're leaving behind for our children, and for other people as well. Um, so Toni, I want to kind of get into something that I know that you're really passionate about, right? And you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but Black feminism is a passion of yours. And I know that you are also really excited about talking about Black feminism in relation to hip hop. So can you tell us, like, first of all, where did that come from for you? And how did that become a passion and how has it influenced your life?
Yeah. My brother jokes all the time that I just like popped out of my mama and I was all about she was all about that girl power stuff. And that women empowerment stuff. So even before I knew what Black feminism was, I just think I grew up and I always knew that girls went through things, they experienced the world differently. um I'm gonna now say feminine people or just like femmes, they experience the world differently. um so that's how I just grew up. I remember like watching the Cheetah Girls for the first time and I was like, oh my god, this is so good, I love it. And then as I got older, I went off to college. I keep referring that. It was a moment that radicalized me. I went to college. I started taking all of these feminist courses. I double majored in sociology and women's studies. So I just started learning so much about, again, my identities as a Black woman, how they're so interconnected, specifically how my identity as a fat Black woman impacts me every day. Um, yeah, and I just started doing the digging and doing the learning, exploring folks like Toni Morrison, Audre Lorde, Joan Morgan, Patricia Hill Collins, all the people who have laid out an amazing foundation for what Black feminism is, and really created spaces and really acknowledging that Black feminism has is what created the space for me to be here and be able to understand just how different my experience is than that of white women. I think in high school, when I would learn about like the suffrage movement and I would learn about women's history, I always thought it was like, oh, like we're just like one big melting pot of women, moving for change. And Black feminism allowed me to grow from that and understand like my place and my power has always looked different than white women, than Latinx women, than Asian women. It has always looked different, right? And that has been directly correlated with my Blackness, my womanness, and of course later understanding how my fatness explored all of that. When I looked more into the hip hop part of it, I started exploring hip hop. Well, back then it was hip hop feminism. Through Dr. Joan Morgan, who's also a fellow Jamaican woman. She released this book, When the Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost. This was like late '90s, maybe like '99. I read it for the first time when I was about 21, I think. And when I read it, it really just laid out how feminism, even then, like Black feminism, was really empowering specifically, but it was no space for hip hop, for Black folk, for Black women in hip hop, or for Black women from the hood to really like lay their footing into what Black feminism has done for them. And I think this even goes back to now when we think about feminism, when we think about all the spaces where Black women are supposed to be empowered. It's like respectability politics, right? We're thinking about like, oh, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, like those are the folks who we should aim and strive to be. No one's saying, oh, we should be like Megan, we should be like Meg Thee Stallion, or we should be like Lil Kim, or we should be like Foxy Brown. Like, nobody was ever saying that, right? And I think hip hop feminism has allowed us to understand the nuance of what feminism can do and be in hip hop, and how owning your body autonomy and your agency for yourself is also that part, and how recognizing that when we don't create space um for girls who are from the hood, from girls who are experiencing gender-based violence and sexual violence from their partners in their house, from folks who are experiencing violence in jail, in juvenile halls. When we excommunicate them from the experience of Black feminism, we are therefore excommunicating a whole group of people and othering them. And I think in this movement, it's important for us to remember that we can't do the othering if society at large is already othering all of us.
That is a quotable. As Oprah said, that's a sweet, sweet. Like, we can't do, we can't do the othering when society is already othering us. And I feel like there's the rub, right? Noticing that it's easy for the oppressed to become the oppressor, right? Especially if we emulate the mindset and the behaviors of the oppressors onto ourselves and onto others. So for you, like that intersection of Black feminism and hip hop, who did it start with? Like, who was your hip hop icon or icons that you look to as, like, feminist leaders, or that you can say, like, this is an example of what I'm talking about when I say hood feminism, Black feminism, and hip hop all sort of mixed together?
Ooh, that is a really good question. Growing up, I would say from like middle school, elementary school, middle school, it was definitely Lil Kim, hands down. It was her. Like, I looked at her and I was like, oh, like this is someone who is breaking barriers, who is like pulling all the stops. She's like reclaiming the word bitch. She is out here at awards with her titties out. She is explaining in all her songs, even like I was actually surprised. My mom had bought me her Naked Truth album, the one she put out before she went to do her bid in prison for that year. Shout out to my mom for giving me that. I didn't think she would, but she did. And I was like probably 10 at the time. God bless her. Um, like listening to her music all the time. I was like, wow, like she's so raunchy, like she's so vulgar, but also being a church kid too, and knowing that like, oh, like should she be saying this? But also like, thinking back to myself, like, but yeah, she should be saying this. Like, why she can't say this? Like, if Jay-Z and 50 Cent are out here saying all this stuff, Lil Kim could say what she want to say. So yeah, just attaching that with how she was able to speak so openly and freely about herself and what she wanted and needed to be pleased and to be pleasured, right? Because as Black women, we're so taught all the time to disconnect our pleasure from ourselves, that we don't deserve that and we didn't earn it, so we don't get it. But saying, nah, like I deserve it every day. So she was definitely one of my staples. Looking back, other shows that I would watch, I connected a lot with Maya from Girlfriends. When I was growing up, I watched that show really heavily, and when I watch it back now because it's on Netflix, so I'll be streaming it. When I watch it back now, I'm like, this is why I connect with her so much, because she was always reading them girls their rights. Like, there were so many times where she pointed out how Joan always thought that she was this like progressive woman person, but how she looked her nose, she turned her nose down at Maya on so many occasions because of the way she talked, because of where she lived, because of who her parents and her family were and where she grew up. So that was a specific time in, I think, media where I saw someone who was navigating like career life, who was navigating trying to, that type of thing that we see in our neighborhood all the time. Like, you're trying to go to school, trying to raise your family, because you're even though you're from like the quote unquote wrong side of the tracks, you're trying to be friends with these other women who don't always deem your existence as valid. Um, so that was one of my examples, Maya. And then later, I think as I grew older, I think in high school, of course, it was Nikki. I think there was so long where I think Nikki popped on the scene when I was in about 10th grade or so. And when she came on, I was like, oh, this is great. Because I had like moved forward so much. Like Trina had kind of disappeared from the scene. Eve had disappeared. Missy Elliott disappeared. Like, all the folks who I would like was so drawn to listen to. I loved Trina growing up too, but they were like fading away. And I was like, dang, there's no one to listen to anymore. And then here Nikki just popped up out of nowhere and was like, ha. And I was like, oh, this is great. So Nikki definitely became that person for a little while for me. And then fast forward now, when I think about who is holding that place and holding it down for me, I think it's like so many people now. And I love that for us. I love that we have so many chances now to connect feminism to hip hop and our movements. And I think there's been just such a great template for all the ways that we can do this, whether it's from like generationals like Angie Martinez all the way up to now. We have Meg, I brought her up earlier, Meg the Stallion, Cardi B. Also Cardi B specifically, being able to name on stages, connecting herself, identifying as a feminist. And of course Beyonce. I know she's not a rapper, but a rapper in this sense, but I definitely look at her as a hip hop feminist icon. So yeah.
Those are all I'm amening all those affirming. I gotta remember to change that. Affirming all of those. Especially when you name Lil Kim and Trina, because I remember I was a little older than you at that time. But I remember hearing it, and when you were talking about sort of growing up, like being a church girl, that was a thing too. And it was such a counter narrative to what I had heard in church or from women in church, where it was this thing of like, a man owns or your body, like or it's supposed to go like to your husband or your father and all those other patriarchal things. And it was such a counter narrative to hear all these different women in hip hop like owning their body and owning their sexuality. And like you said, this is what I want. I'm gonna get it, whether it was sexuality or whether it was money, or as I see it now, abundance, and like not being apologetic about like how they were saying and being very assertive. It was such a counter narrative that I was drawn to it. And I remember like you said, Eve, like all those people, Pitbull in the skirt, all of that. I was like, yeah, I was all like, yes. And when it came on, it was something about the music that made me feel like a badass and like empowered and like, you can't tell me shit. Like, I'm it. And it's just, and it's interesting that, it's, of course, we know it's not coincidental, but when these women come out with their music that they're vilified, it's like, oh gosh, it's it's the worst thing ever. But it's so empowering, and it's no coincidence that when these women are coming out with their music and their art, and like you said, even how they're showing up physically in spaces, it's so empowering, and it breaks so many forms of patriarchal systems and all of that, that people just, have conniptions and all those things about it. But it continues to happen over and over again, and I'm here for all of it, and I'm excited about like who's coming next. So let me ask you one thing real quick, and then we're going to talk about Caribbean culture and carnival and dancing and all of that juicy goodness. But if you could meet with anyone tomorrow, one person who's a feminist hip hop artist, who would it be?
Oh, that is such a good question. Well, first, I do want to highlight also Eve, because I know I mentioned her, but she meant so much to me growing up. I remember the first time I heard "Love Is Blind." I was probably like, I don't know, 7 or something, but I like had that album on loop when I was growing up. So
Yeah.
yes, Eve has done so much for the culture. But someone who I would meet tomorrow who is a feminist hip hop icon. Ooh, that is such a good question. I mean, Kimberly Denise Jones. I have to meet her. Like Lil Kim, hands down. I cherish that woman. I think she deserves so much more than she's been given. And yeah, Lil Kim. That is who I'm trying to meet. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So we'll put it out into the universe. I will say that
Yes.
mine is Queen Latifah. Anybody who knows me knows this.
Yeah.
Queen,
She turned
Queen
51
Dana.
yesterday.
Yes, I know. Yesterday was her birthday. I know this too.
Yes.
Like, oh, well, it's a tie. Okay, so it's between Queen Latifah and Missy, but Queen Latifah's like got a little edge. But both of
Right.
I'll take a lunch with
I'm gonna
either
actually
one.
take one of yours too. I
Okay.
actually have to transition spaces, y'all. Sorry, my phone was about to die,
No,
so I
you're
had
fine.
to like quickly transition. But yeah, Queen Latifah is also on my list too. I also revert back to Living Single. I think I watch Living Single almost every day. And that shows a constant reminder of just what it looks like for like, I don't want to say average, but like average sized women who are just chill, building sisterhood, being together. I look at that show and I'm like, yes, this is what it looks like. So Queen Latifah too. I'm a borrow yours.
Yes, and I saw you, and we're gonna get into the Caribbean culture, but I know you talked about you all just go to her page on Instagram, Fat Black Luxury, but I know you also have commentary around the misogynoir of people criticizing Queen Latifah and her playing the role in the Equalizer and all of that. We could get into that a whole nother 30-40 minutes, but just visit Toni's page, Fat Black Luxury. She's got commentary on there. Get into the conversation.
It's ridiculous.
Yes, yes. So let's dig into Caribbean culture, because I know that that's a big part of who you are. I know it's a big part of what you talk about and you celebrate. So when it comes to, like, I know you even highlighted during Black History Month, like Black people who came from Caribbean or who Caribbean roots or Caribbean immigrants who impacted American history. Why is it so important for you? Of course, you because of your own history, but to really talk about this on your page and in your media when it comes to Caribbean culture.
Yeah. I think it just sums up as like that is a big part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk about childhood, because those are our formative years, and they really name and shape who we become, or like they play a role in who we become. I remember growing up and going to school and talking about specific cultural things, and people not identifying with it. It wasn't until I got to high school, right? High school, we were talking about like our favorite. It was like probably the first week of school, and because like I said, in elementary school and middle school, I had a lot of other Caribbean American friends. So like things I talked about didn't seem absurd because they knew I visited their homes and their parents also spoke in accents and other dialects, and I was like, oh, this is cool. But then I got to high school. I remember being in class and I was talking about like, for example, I brought up macaroni pie, right? Like I know Americans, it's baked mac and cheese, right? But in the Caribbean, we call it macaroni pie. I didn't know that it had different names. For some reason, I just thought that they were interchangeable, and it was just like what we all called it or something. And I remember like I brought it up. And the class started laughing. They was like, "What the fuck is that? Blah blah blah, yada yada." And I felt so shunned. I was like,
Oh,
dang. I was like, okay, maybe I don't know. Cool. So it was just like something like as simple as that, about being different, and then by being different, feeling othered. Even though again, like I said, I went to high school with like other Latinx people, who are also from other Caribbean countries, but I feel like there's also something very different about the specific place in the Caribbean that you're from, right? And that also impacts how you're able to show up for people. So, long story short, I connect that as a big part of my platforms, as a part of who I am, because it is a large part of how I move through the world. I was just talking to someone about my stimulus check. We all got our stimmies. Hopefully, for the most part, folks have gotten their stimmies. And I was telling your friends, oh, but my stimmy's gone. And they were like, damn, girl, what you did with it already? And I was like, I didn't do a lot. I gave half of it to my uncle who's undocumented, so he doesn't get a stimmy, right? So I'm always moving through the world thinking about who are my people? How do I connect with them? How do I uplift their voices? How do I continue to use my platform to center their experiences, and how do I connect with myself? I think growing up in a home with immigrant parents, when I was younger, my father didn't receive his citizenship until I think I was about 12 or so. And when I was 9 years old, I had to talk to a judge about why my dad shouldn't be deported, right? So there was like a plethora of experiences in my life where I knew that my parents were different. And I couldn't really talk about outside of the house. Like I couldn't tell anybody growing up that my father didn't have papers, right? Like those were things that was like hush hush. Um, so I think now that I'm in adulthood, I can look back and I can see how those experiences shaped me. I can see how I'm able to connect with other Black folks across the Caribbean diaspora, and name our experiences, and then take that. I know, like W.E.B. Du Bois talks about that double consciousness, right? And in terms of being a Black American, and I can also identify with that in terms of growing up in a house with immigrant parents, and also being first generation American, right? So like you step out of your house is different. Like there's also like code switching, right? So I might talk differently when I'm at home than I do when I'm outside, and things like that. So just being able to name my platform as a place where Caribbeans can come and find like solace, find their community, be with their brethren and stuff is always really important to me.
yeah, absolutely. And do like at the intersection of we're kind of talking about your Caribbean culture, and I know that I've also seen in your media how like you celebrate through dance and through movement and all of those things. How does that sort of shape you embracing your fatness, embracing, part of your fat acceptance, your womanhood, your blackness, it's all mixed in there together. How does that impact those things?
Yes. So I named that it was only through Carnival, playing mass for folks who don't know what that is, but there's carnival season in the Caribbean is usually noted in most islands as commemorate at the time where like slaves in Caribbean islands, African slaves, were able to rebel against our white oppressors. And it's also named in most countries as a time of harvest. So thinking about new seasons of blessings, new seasons of offerings, things of that nature. So yeah, Carnival is a time to acknowledge our ancestors' resilience and their rebellious spirit. So when I go to Carnival, I it's my time to like let loose, to connect with my foremothers and my four people and my ancestors. And it's in Carnival that I feel like I really connected with my sexuality and my body in a different way. Even though I think growing up, I was always sexualized. That there was always men who wanted to sleep with me. They didn't necessarily want to be with me or want to date me, but they wanted to sleep with me. Um, but even though they wanted those things, I didn't often connect them with me being sexy or me being sexual. So when I started playing mass, I think, which is short for a masquerade, which is like the costume with like the bedazzled bras and the feathers, all the things, right? Um, I was able to experience my sexuality in a different way. And I experienced it as being something that was for me and for myself. Yeah, I just look at it as like movement is, like you said, like I see movement as resistance, and also as resilience. There's been so many times in my life that I've been told that as like a bigger Black person, you should take up less space, you should make yourself small, you should stay in the corner, be invisible, don't be seen. Or like my mom used to tell me, and I know this is like a throwback, like Black church thing, but be seen and not heard. And I'm like,
Mhm.
why would I do that? And Carnival allows me to be seen, to be heard. Like we use like phrases like, carry on bad, and just be in it. And it's just it's a I can't even put it in words because it's so freeing. When the pandemic hit and I realized I wouldn't be able to do this thing, that allowed me to connect to my womanhood in a deep way, that allowed me to connect to my roots in such a deep way. Like I was in shock. I'm still in shell shock. I still can't believe that this thing isn't happening anymore for a long time. Um, and it left me to really think about, okay, what are the other ways and other tools I can continue to foster this community for myself. So when I talk about Carnival, it's more than the celebration, it's more than the party. It is something that keeps me grounded in my body, and reminds me that I have a right to be here. I like people before me like have brought me here, and me taking up space isn't something that I need to earn. It's my birthright. And I can do that by connecting with my ancestors, connecting with the music, and allowing it to continue to free me as it's always done. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like in you talking about that, I hear some similarities between carnival and which how you referenced hip hop and women showing up in hip hop music through feminism and sort of just like the whole reclaiming of the body and reclaiming of the sexuality and just like how the music makes you feel in your body and how empowered it is. And it sounds like there's so many similarities between carnival and that. So I can see how you could be a fan of both and enjoy both. Um, one of the things that I've noticed, I have not been, but it is on my leap list. I don't like to say bucket list, but it's on my leap list for life to do this. So one of the things that I noticed is that, it's like people of all different sizes out sharing their body and bejeweled and feathered and adorned and all of those things. And it's just like a part of the community and a part of just the all of the festivals together. Like, how does that make a difference in like how you feel about your body and kind of how you show up and being able to be a part of that and adorn your body in that way?
Yes, yes, like you said, that specific even language of being able to adorn myself. Like, how many times do you really get to adorn yourself in that way, right? You are like, I look at that time as like that's a time of year. No matter how many times I do it a year, it's a time where I can just dedicate to myself. Like I'm spending thousands of dollars for the experience, right? To make myself feel good, to help myself have the best time that I can. Um, and I'm also like moving differently than I would in the States, right? I think it's also something super ancestral about our bodies being bigger, right? When we connect it to history, right? Like anti-blackness and fat phobia are connected, right? Fat phobia is anti-black. So when I'm able to go back to other islands and visit different countries and see how even the viewership of, and while fat phobia is global as well as anti-blackness is, I think it's just different in the States, right? Um, I can visit any island and 9 times out of 10, my my body will be received differently, right? Usually when I'm in the Caribbean, I'm probably half naked, honestly, whether it is in swimwear, whether I have on like poom poom shorts or like a bikini top. I'm like usually always, roaming freely. And I feel empowered to do that because 9 times out of 10, I'm not receiving, side eye stares of like, what is she? Why is she? What? Who dressed her? It's more so of like, hey, hey, hey. Well, like it's always a more, and this is not me, putting down the messaging, but it's also just different, right? Because I think it goes back to when the quote unquote phrase of returning home to your body, returning home to yourself. It just hits different. I think there's like an ancestral part about carnival I keep referring back to, and also about being on the island that just feels and allows my body to move differently. I think in America, we just haven't gotten to a place where we have connected body politics to anti-blackness. We're trying to get there, but we haven't really got there yet. And when I'm able to go to Jamaica, or whether when I'm able to visit any other island and participate in carnival and be adorned, and also be, what's the word I'm looking for, be recognized, right? Because some places you might travel to in the Caribbean also recognize you for for your size, right? Like there's like terms of endearment. I know we have that in our culture too here in America. But if I'm in Jamaica right now, and I'm, carrying on and doing all the things, they're like, oh, did you see that Fluffy going on bad and all that things like that, right? Whether it's like versus if I'm at a party here in America, it might be received differently. Oh my God, did you see that fat girl like doing the most? Right? So yes, it's just a feeling of liberation that I can't really put into words. It's just so deep in my gut. So I hope I'm explaining it good enough for y'all, and I hope it's transpiring. But yeah, I just want every fat black femme to experience that liberation of my body can move and it can jiggle and it can go which way. And the person next to me is gonna pull up and dance with me anyway. The person next to me is gonna hype me up anyway. I can walk down the street in this bikini, and people are gonna, beep their horn and big me up, right? They're not gonna shun me, and I think we all deserve to be affirmed that way. And I would, yes, and anytime I get to experience that, I'm all for it.
I love that. Like put that out there into the universe that all the fat black femmes, fat brown femmes. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I'm gonna say it's perfect because you will go to carnival and you will have some photographers who will try to push you aside to get to the slim girl. So we still have our things too that we're working
Mhm.
with and we're working through, but the atmosphere is also, the atmosphere is different.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely like and when you were talking, I totally get what you're saying about it being different. I believe because I'm an energy person, so um, I feel like the energy is just different in America, and it's not just a system thing. It's not just a social thing. It literally is a energy thing. It literally is a spiritual thing on this soil of this land that is different, especially for those who are descendants of the diaspora or of enslaved peoples or displaced peoples or any of those things. I just feel like the energy is different. And if you get the chance to visit somewhere else, you can tell the difference. I think if you haven't done that, then you don't tell. But when you go, it's like, okay, it's a totally different breath of fresh air. It's just a totally different thing. And then when you come back, you realize, oh, okay. It's
It's true.
energetic.
You come back and you're like, oh, dang it.
Yes.
Now we're back.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's an energetic thing. We'll talk about the energetics on another episode. But but thank you so much for being here, Tony. Is there anything that you, before we wrap up, anything that you'd like to invite our guests to watch, listen to, anything you're offering, anything you'd like to share before we conclude today's session?
Yes. Once again, thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure. I had an amazing time talking about this with you. And I think it goes back to oftentimes in social work and counseling, you talk about being able to repeat things and how the more you repeat them allows you more time to unpack it, and it becomes more what's what I'm looking for, more cathartic for you. So this is definitely one of those times. So thank you again. I would invite folks to join me on listening to my podcast. I'm a podcaster. I don't know how I forgot to say that, but I am. I co-host a podcast with one of my homegirls, Alexis, who's also Jamaican American. It's called Stay in the Sun Podcast. Please check us out. We're on episode like 20 now, so we're making our way up there. So please check it out. We also have a limited edition candle that we recently released with a Black-owned business titled Sadiddy Scents. So we will be gifting someone that gift after this Friday's Fat Chat. I'm not sure how Fat Women of Color would like to distribute that or what the process is to go through that, but we would love to gift one of the viewers a limited edition candle.
Absolutely. We'll definitely make sure we take care of that on the Fat Woman of Color Instagram so we can do a drawing for that. I really appreciate you being willing to gift everybody something. And like Tony said, definitely support her podcast, visit her on Instagram and Twitter under Fat Black Luxury. It's at the bottom of the screen if you're able to see it. There we go. And, and if you're listening to the episode, it'll be in the show notes as well. So you'll be able to get that information. Thank you so much for being here, Tony. Those of you who are watching, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay, make sure that you like this episode to let YouTube know that you appreciate what we're creating here and the information that we're giving out here, as well as hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel so that you can get notifications about upcoming episodes, as well as share, post this on your blog, post this on your page, let other people know if there were things that you learned here, things that resonated here, anything that was a good takeaway. Definitely share that as well. That's much appreciated. And if you're watching on the replay, or if you're listening, make sure that you leave commentary and we'll make sure that Tony gets that as well. Anything, okay, yes, we've got a comment from Tina that just so you know that we did have some people who are saying that they did enjoy the episode. And Tina said, thank you. This was fantastic. So our viewers have been listening and paying attention, paying attention the whole time. Anything else before we close out that you'd like to say? Any
No,
leaving thoughts, parting
I
thoughts?
think that's it. I just want everyone to know that they are worth it. They've always been worth it. And you don't have to earn a damn thing. Show up and take what's yours. That's it.
Absolutely. Thank you all for being here. I'm Ivy Felicia, the body relationship coach and the founder of Fat Women of Color. I appreciate you for watching and listening today. And we'll be back with another episode soon. So subscribe so you can find out when. All right. Much love, y'all.